Mike Murray.
This is SNL.
SNL
By The Numbers.
Numbers.
We're in the home stretch. Does Double Dua do it? I am now a dad. There's the opening haiku for you. We are covering episode 966 of Saturday Night Live, hosted by Dua Lipa, with musical guest Dua Lipa. Welcome to SNL By The Numbers, the home of SNL stats. My name is Mike Murray with the SNN. We are a presentation of LateNighter.com. I am broadcasting to you live from the maternity unit in a hospital in Massachusetts, and want to welcome my first guest, Jon Schneider. What have you been up to, man?
Not nearly as much as you, Fat Daddy. I am so happy for you that that everything is going great, that baby came into this world, and now we just have to look forward to baby's first podcast. So thanks for joining us tonight, Mike.
Yeah, this is it. She's in the room, so
It's very exciting.
Baby's first podcast.
There's 4 hosts on the episode tonight, not just 3.
Yep, that's it. And welcome Sammy Kay back to the program. What's up, Sammy?
Mike, it's great to be here. John tipped me earlier this week to come on the show because you weren't going to be available because you had other things going on in your life, or some other things. But very happy that you're here tonight, and that you're a father. You're fat daddy. You're always going to look back, to like this special moment and associate this episode of SNL with the birth of your daughter. And I think that's very special. Fat daddy will live on forever.
Yeah, this episode will be a time capsule. We had double prego ego in the show, and I also couldn't break my SNL By The Numbers Iron Man streak, so the grind never sleeps.
It's very impressive. And Mike, while you're with us, I do have to ask you, did any OBGYN come towards your wife with any tongs? Like, what was the situation?
Well, I don't know if you guys know what forceps are, but they are on the table, so not too far off from tongs. But there was no, barbecue references, no licking of fingers, so that's good.
Okay, well, thankfully, glad to hear that.
I'm disappointed, honestly.
Yeah, Mike, do you have a second to tell us what you thought of the episode overall, the Dua Lipa episode?
Yeah, I did watch live. Did the stats that John will go through with you guys tonight. I was a weird-ish episode for Dua not having a ton of screen time out, for a double duty host outside the music, because I think it was like 16 minutes that she was in, and that's like the lowest of any host if you subtract musical performances. So she was definitely a backseat to the episode. It was better on second watch, and probably wasn't my favorite, but it was a decent episode. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with you. The stats definitely show what we thought while watching it live, which is that Dua was definitely not used in the way that she could have been. I didn't think that they really had the faith in her that I was hoping that they would. And it almost feels like, you hate to say this because they'll never admit it, but that they were holding back for Maya next week. Sammy, how do you feel?
Yeah, I thought that she did like an okay job for somebody who has very limited acting appearances, so far in her career. Like, obviously she was in Barbie in a short cameo. She was in Argyle earlier this year. Was an interesting choice to have her doing a lot of accent work throughout the episode. I found, like, just, if you already have somebody who's not super comfortable necessarily like acting, especially live sketch comedy, I don't know if that's something she wanted to do or if they tasked her to do it, to maybe, I don't know, give her an extra challenge. But I found that to be an interesting choice. But overall, I think she did a fine enough job. Yeah.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on with us for just a few minutes. I know that your life is crazy right now, and it's only going to get crazier while you're raising your new child. So we are all everybody on the podcast, all of the listeners, everyone who's grown to know you and love you, is so thankful that we got to hear from you for a few minutes after this special moment in your life, and we want to wish you a heartfelt congratulations, and looking forward to hearing from you more over the next couple of weeks when you can get back to it.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate great friends like you, and ultimate shout out to my wife who did all the work.
Yes.
Women are amazing. They're way stronger than men. So go call your mom this Sunday for Mother's Day because she deserves it.
Absolutely.
Well
That's
said.
a great message, Mike. So we will chat with you soon, buddy. And Sammy and I will take the rest of the way. We'll go through all the numbers of the week. We'll do you proud, Mike.
Yeah, we
All
got
right.
you.
Have a great show. Do me proud.
Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
All right,
Wow.
Sammy Kay, let's keep going. Let's talk about first of all, it's so cool just to get to hear from Mike. First podcast ever done in the maternity ward.
Yeah, and maybe not the last. Hopefully not the last. We'd love to see more life be brought into this wonderful, wonderful world.
Yes, for sure. More SNL fans being brought into the world.
Yes.
That's, how exciting is that? So, all right. Well, we are here to talk about the numbers of the week. So I'm happy to take the hosting mantle a little bit and talk through everything with Sammy. So as we do on the show each and every week, we go through the screen time. So we're going to reveal the screen time this week from the double duty Dua Lipa episode of Saturday Night Live. And here we go, putting it up on screen right now for everybody watching along with us on YouTube. Here we go. SNL Screen Time, Season 49, Episode 18. Dua Lipa, 11 appearances, including her 2 performances, 23 minutes and 17 seconds. So, traditionally, double duty, you'd expect a little bit more screen time. So that was something that Mike had brought up. Colin Jost, a dominant week for Colin, getting all 3 correspondents on his side of the desk. 9 minutes and 11 seconds for Jost. Keenan leads the rest of the cast with 8 minutes and 50 seconds. Very unusual for Keenan to lead the cast, at least in this season. So that's something to talk about there. 4 appearances for Keenan. Mikey Day up next, 4 appearances in 7 minutes 28. Heidi with 5 appearances, 6 minutes 31 seconds. Marcelo leading the featured players, 3 minutes and 3 appearances, 5 minutes 55 seconds. And we got 5 minutes 19 seconds for Bowen Yang and 4 appearances. JAJ with 3 sketch appearances and 3 voiceovers, so with 6 total appearances in the episode, 4 minutes and 50 seconds for JAJ. Chloe Fineman, 5 appearances and 4 minutes 15. Ego, 3 appearances, 4 minutes 14. Andrew Dismukes, 3 appearances, 3 minutes 20. Michael Che, just 3 minutes and 14 seconds compared to Colin Jost, 9 minutes 11 seconds. So 6 minutes less of screen time for Che this week versus Jost. Devin Walker, 3 appearances, 3 minutes and 9 seconds. We had some lead roles for Devin, though. Sarah Sherman, just 1 very large appearance, 3 minutes and 7 seconds in that pre-tape. Jerry Seinfeld with an intro and a large appearance on Weekend Update, 2 minutes 34 seconds. Michael Longfellow, just that cold open, anchoring that one for 1 minute and 12 seconds. Punky Johnson made 1 appearance in the OBGYN sketch, 23 seconds. Steve Higgins, a couple of voiceovers, 12 seconds. Molly Carney was in the Penne pre-tape, 9 seconds. Then we have Dua Lipa's parents, both at 7 seconds. Troye Sivan did an intro at 4 seconds. And our first shutout of the career for Chloe Trost, 0 seconds for her. Sammy, anything stand out to you here for the screen time of the week?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that stood out was Keenan being so dominant. He had a lot of great pieces in this episode, starting off the episode with the cold open. He's really getting the opportunity to anchor that. And obviously he's with Heidi and Mikey as well, who, consistently throughout the season have had strong numbers. But, seeing him kind of be leaned on more in this episode, I found to be interesting. And I do wonder if that kind of correlates with maybe the show's lack of faith in the host, being able to carry sketches necessarily. That's just, my initial read of that.
I think so. Look, it probably was a combination of a few things. I think they didn't necessarily feel like Dua was going to bring it for whatever reason. I think also, the Met Gala, is on a lot of people's minds. There's a lot of stuff going on at the beginning of May. I know that, a lot of people have shows that they're performing. I think Michael Longfellow is flying to do a show for Netflix as a joke, right after the episode this weekend. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in LA too. Obviously, you saw online that Mikey Day and Ryan Gosling were at the Fall Guy opening
Right.
was that Tuesday, like writing night. So like I just think there's like a lot going on this week. So I again I sort of Keenan having a great week correlates to me with them holding back a little bit, because it just feels like he's sort of that guy that they could use him where they need him. Mike told me that this is the highest screen time for Keenan since the Pete episode. So since the premiere where he did 10
Oh,
minutes and
wow.
18 seconds. So it's been like all season. We have not seen him put up these numbers.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I mean, he's on my fantasy team, so was definitely happy to see him, perform this week for sure.
Yeah. Any other people you want to talk about that you see on this list that's interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to point out, I mean, this is more of a negative one, I suppose, but I was very disappointed to see the lack of Trost this week. Was happy to see her today in the promo, but I do feel like, we were going so long without shutouts, and I know in the last couple of episodes we've gotten more and more of those with some of the featured players. So that was a bit of a bummer. And I feel
so
like
about the shutouts, I'll
yeah.
just say, so first career shutout for Chloe Trost, the third shutout of the season. So Molly was shut out in Rami's episode. Longfellow was shut out in Wig's episode. No shutouts the previous 18 episodes from Jenna Ortega last year through Josh Brolin this year. So for whatever reason, the last few episodes, it seems that, obviously stuff gets cut after dress, but it seems like they've made less of a conscious effort to get everybody in the episode now that we're starting to get some people who are shut out completely from the live show.
Right. And I also feel like I wonder if there's a correlation, and maybe the actual data of recent sketches will not show this, but I'm thinking about this episode in particular. I do feel like they have been putting together a lot more focused sketches with only like 3 or 4 cast members tops for at least a lot of the live sketches. I feel like, Penne alla vodka, for example, with a pre-tape, you can get a lot of people in. So I wonder if kind of the scaling back of the parade sketches is having an impact on the increase in some of these shutouts.
That's certainly a possibility. So some other notes from Mike on the screen time. So he had mentioned when he was on briefly that Dua Lipa had the lowest screen time of the season if you remove her musical performances, which again, goes into what we were saying about how they used her. 19th lowest host screen time since the beginning of season 44, going back 5 years, 116 episodes, excluding the SNL at Home episodes from Hanks and Wiggs. So, pretty low usage compared to the last 5 years. Third consecutive episode with a weekend update host being the screen time leader. So Dua Lipa has obviously had Jost as the leader. Gosling had Che, Wig had Jost, and McKinnon had Che. So they are alternating back and forth at least the last few episodes between who's dominating, but this was clearly a Colin Jost episode. Second longest update of the season total. So this was 15 minutes and 18 seconds. The only longer update was 16 minutes and 56 seconds, and that was from the Jason Momoa episode. So what do you attribute a long update to, Sammy? Is it go in line with what we were saying?
Yeah, like once you kind of lay all the cards out like this, I definitely do kind of feel, and I felt personally update, feeling long, like while watching the episode, it felt like, okay, like do we need all these characters? Like, is this like could we have gotten another live sketch or a pre-tape in this particular set of update? So yeah, I think certainly just trying to. I don't want to say fill time, but it kind of does feel that way a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I do feel like, if you go through the list of the screen time here, it's a lot of people you would think would naturally be given an opportunity if they were playing it safe. So Keenan, Mikey, Heidi, obviously all the vets of the cast, Marcelo, they're trying to make a star. So you expect that he's going to get a lot of moments. Bowen as well, star, JAJ, clearly, they're making a concerted effort to make him very much more involved. So, it feels like chalk. This is a very chalk episode of the show. There's nothing too unsafe about it. The only thing I can maybe point to is that like Devin and Sarah were both given moments to shine in the episode. And I think they both did. However, from a screen time perspective, it was just, not an extended period to shine. It was like a moment here, a moment there. Sarah had that one big sketch that I think a lot of people are going to take away from this episode. Devin had, the big moments between the Young Spicy and then also the Good Morning Greenville sketch where they really focused on him being the guy who was playing off of Heidi and Mikey.
Yeah, I mean the Sarah sketch to me was, one of the highlights of the episode personally for myself. And was, once I got to the good nights, kind of surprised, like, oh yeah, that was really kind of her only thing in the episode tonight, but definitely had a big impact. I guess another thing that I found interesting, if we're talking about people that only had a couple appearances, was Longfellow. Was nice to see him up top in the cold open, kind of with those three vets of this current era of the show, who all had like a pretty dominant night between like Heidi, Mikey, and Keenan. I think he just fits that kind of host straight man role so well. So that was very refreshing to see him in that role again.
I agree. That was really fun to have him there. Devin got his 100th appearance, a sketch appearance in this episode. Marcelo's currently sitting at 99, so we expect him to get that this weekend. So those are some other notable statistics for this episode. So yeah, very interesting screen time from this week. We're going to get into the power rankings shortly. But before we do, Sammy, I worked very hard on a fun stat this week. So I'm excited to share with you. I haven't shown it to anybody yet, but I'm really, really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this. So I was thinking to myself, Dua Lipa, Dua, kind of like duo. I'm like, I hear a lot about, which cast members play well with other cast members. What if I actually do the stats? So I went back to episode 1 of the season and I started marking down every sketch and every cast member in it. Like I do have the data on that. And I was like, how many times does a certain cast member appear with another cast member in a sketch? And, there's about like 110 pairs, I guess you could take a give or take. The exact number is there's 105 pairs of cast members, because if you remove Jost and Shay, I don't really count them. So you take every other cast member. How many times does somebody appear with somebody else throughout the entire season? So just off the top of your head, who do you think like the biggest duos are in the cast right now?
That's a really good question. I mean, this is recency bias, but certainly I think Dismukes and JJ have been getting a lot on together, and I would imagine they're higher up there. Do you want some more guesses before you reveal, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to know, because before I reveal, because we'll get into talking about it, I really want to know like who you think, and everybody in the chat, let me know who you think the top duos are this season, because you mentioned those, and like really going back to decades, SNL was viewed for a long time in the perspective of duos, going back to Belushi and Aykroyd, or Nora Dunn and Jan Hooks, like putting them together, Phil Hartman and Jan Hooks. Like there's a lot of duos, Will Ferrell and Catan. Like you could find throughout the eras people who played really well together. So I was curious, like, who from this era plays well together and who doesn't?
Yeah. I think another example from this episode, and I think, is consistent throughout, just thinking about the season, Heidi and Mikey as well. Obviously having that big moment last week, or, last episode, not this one, in the Beavis and Butthead sketch. And then, having the morning talk show sketch. I mean, Chloe and Heidi as well, you see a good amount. I'm trying. Those are the ones that I, my first initial thoughts are, but I would love to hear the real answers.
Okay, I'm gonna give you the real answers, but I have one more question for you.
Oh, okay.
Which cast members do you think never are in sketches together? Like who are the least duos in the cast?
I feel like you can just, pinpoint, like, okay, think about who gets the least amount of screen time. And then kind of backtrack it from there. Like I'm trying to think, like Longfellow and like Longfellow and Ego. I can't think of a sketch they're necessarily in together.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up on screen the top 10 SNL duos of the season and the bottom 10 SNL duos of the season. So we can go over them together and talk through what we think. Does this data, like, does the raw data match up to the eye test here? So the numbers only count when two people are in a sketch together, or if they make a weekend update appearance together. So let's say Marcelo and Keenan did something together on update, I counted that. But if they're on update in separate pieces, then I didn't count it. So here we go. Let's talk about this. Top 10 SNL duos. So I'll read it. In first place, Chloe and Heidi have been in 40 SNL sketches together this season. 39 sketches, we have a three-way tie between Mikey and Heidi, Mikey and JAJ, and Heidi and JAJ. In fifth place at 38 sketches, we got Heidi and Ego, Mikey and Andrew together at 36 sketches. And then at 34 sketches, a four-way tie starting at seventh. Mikey and Chloe, Mikey and Keenan, Andrew, JAJ, and JAJ and Keenan. So those are our top 10 SNL duos. People who are very unlikely to be in sketches together based on what we've seen. Bottom, only 10 sketches that they've ever appeared in this season together. Michael Longfellow and Chloe Trost. You really never see them on screen. It is a rarity to see them together. In 12 sketches together, Molly and Longfellow, and then Marcelo and Molly. Also, in 13 sketches, we got Chloe and Devin, Sarah and Devin, and Marcelo and Trost. And then that should not say 34, but I'll fix that. That should say 14, I believe. So 14 at the bottom 10, but should say, so for 14 sketches together, Devin and Bowen, Molly and Sarah, Punky and Devin, and Punky and Longfellow here. So
wow.
Based on what I'm just showing you here, anything stand out to you?
I guess like some that like are in the top 10 that are like kind of like unexpected, like Chloe Heidi makes sense. Mikey Heidi makes sense. I obviously guessed both of those. Mikey and JJ, like in my mind, they kind of sometimes can occupy similar kind of glue guy roles in the cast. So it's interesting to see them, tied for second there. And then also looking at the bottom, I mean, yeah, it just kind of makes sense. You take the featured players or the, players that kind of, get the, some of the lesser screen time, and you kind of can make a bunch of different combinations of those. A little surprised, I picked Dismukes and JJ. Maybe those just have more of an impact for me. Obviously they're still in the top 10, but they're not in the top 5. Yeah, so this is interesting.
Yeah, I thought this was super interesting. I mean, for me, like Chloe and Heidi together, like I could not think of many sketches that they were in together this season, like as a lead, I guess. This is just saying like sketches that I guess in any role, but 40 sketches for Chloe and Heidi, that's a little surprising to me. I felt like, once Kate and Cecily and 80 were like had left the show, I had assumed that these two were going to be in sketches together a lot, but I didn't really remember too many, or at least too many great ones. Like they did the dance instructor one last season. They did the What's in the Kiln this season, which I really did not care for. And I really felt like their comedic sensibilities are so different from each other that like I would never expect them, if you would have asked me after 18 episodes, like which two cast members were in the most sketches together, that it's them. But that may be more circumstantial than anything else. Because I do think like if I had to pick like another woman on the cast that Heidi would probably pair well with in sketches, I would think it would be more Ego than anything else. And I guess it's close to 38 sketches, but still, I thought that was interesting for me. I would think that Heidi's pair would be what we saw in the Good Morning Greenville and in the Cold Open, where we got to see Heidi and Mikey together.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I felt like the show, kind of like what you're saying, especially after, the big exodus, 2 seasons ago. I felt like the show was really trying to make them a thing. They were doing, weekend update characters together. But it did feel like this season that, the data's saying otherwise. It felt like we were seeing, less of that. So it is interesting that they are in first place. Obviously, the numbers are very close, towards the top there, but they ultimately edged it out, which is surprising.
Yeah. So in the bottom, I mean, I was pretty surprised. Like I was thinking the same thing as you. It's going to be all the people with the least amount of screen time are all going to be jumbled up together somewhere at the bottom. But then to see like a couple interesting pairs here that are never really put together, I thought was fascinating to me. So a couple stood out for me. One is Sarah Sherman and Devin Walker, only 13 sketches together this season. Like, isn't that one a little surprising?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see, it's like this is like a very interesting exercise because, I mean, why don't we see them together? I mean, like Devin, I don't know. Like you would think like Devin, with his sort of, he is like in a lot of roles sometimes where he's kind of, sort of reacting to things or being more of the straight character. So, being able to have him in a sketch where Sarah's being, wacky and crazy and gross, I think, there is potential there. So it is interesting to see that we haven't seen that.
Yeah, see what you get here though is that like conventionally I would feel like, okay, so we have Sarah and Devin. Then we have, it should say 14 sketches there, not 34. So my apologies for that. But we have Devin and Bowen and Molly and Bowen. And I think that's really interesting here because what we get by having Sarah with Devin and Bowen with Devin and Molly shows you that Sarah and Bowen, when they are in sketches, are not necessarily with the featured players as much as they are with the other repertory players, because we also have Sarah and Molly there sitting at 14 sketches. So it's like when you see Sarah or Bowen, you could maybe throw Punky in there as well, because we got a Punky and Devin and a Punky and Longfellow. Like when those three are in sketches, it tends to be more with the vets of the cast. And I wonder if this is an exercise in, okay, well, producers, when they're casting sketches, like maybe they just prefer putting people like a Sarah, like a Bowen, or like a Punky in with more veteran, experienced cast members. For whatever reason, they play off of them better.
Yeah, and then thinking about the real vets, like people like Heidi and Mikey and Keenan, maybe because they have I don't know if experience is the right word, but they've just been around longer and they're more have more time and they've proven themselves more on the show. Maybe you do throw the featured players in with them more so to kind of give that support.
Yeah, so I thought this was a good exercise. And then I said to myself, I'm like, well, we could also look at the data one other way, Sammy, which was like, if I gave you a cast member and I asked you, okay, Mikey Day, who are they most likely to be in a sketch with? And who are they least likely to be in a sketch with? Like, you again maybe would have guessed, okay, I think Mikey is most likely to be with Heidi and maybe least likely to be with, I don't know, Molly or Devin or something like that, like we were just talking about. So I also parsed the data that way to put it up on screen. So I thought we could look at it and go over some of these, like just by individual names and talk through them. So that way I could discuss who is most likely to be in a sketch with each cast member, and who is least likely to be in a sketch with each cast member. So let's start with the most likely. I'll read this for the audio listeners. So Mikey, most likely to be with Heidi or JJ. Andrew with Mikey. Chloe, most likely to be with Heidi. Heidi and Chloe. Marcelo with Mikey. JJ with Mikey or Heidi. Punky with either Heidi, Ego, or Keenan. Molly with Heidi. Longfellow with Heidi. Ego with Heidi. And Sarah with Heidi. Keenan with Mikey. Trost with Chloe. Chloe Feynman. And Devin with JJ. And then Bowen with Heidi. And then who they're least likely to be with, we got Mikey's least likely to be with Trost or Michael Longfellow. Andrew least likely to be with Molly. Chloe least likely to be with Devin. Heidi with Trost. Marcelo, Molly. JJ, Trost. Punky with Devin or Longfellow. Molly with Longfellow. Longfellow with Trost. Ego with Molly. Sarah with Devin. Keenan with Molly. Trost with Longfellow. Devin with Sarah or Trost. And Bowen with Molly or Devin. Anything stick out to you here?
Well, first off, I think this is like just fascinating and also very funny. This reminds me of I don't know if you did this in Canada, but in yearbooks, you have like the most likely to be section when you're like a senior or something. Okay, so this is like that, except like for whether or not you're going to be in a sketch with them. So I don't know.
Yes, I won most likely to be a bar mitzvah MC.
Oh, and there you go. Dreams really do come true.
Dreams come true. Most likely to host an SNL podcast.
Yeah. I think the thing that stands out to me a lot is in this most likely to be in a sketch with section, you see Heidi's name a ton. Like you see Heidi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Like I feel like that just kind of goes more so to the fact that like she is really becoming like, like an anchor of this cast and is collaborating with so many different people that it just makes sense that, for a lot of these cast members, you're most likely to see them in a sketch with someone that you can argue is like SNL's biggest star right now. Like if you were to maybe, do this, a couple seasons ago when Kate was on the show, maybe Kate would have been, the one that, is in that column. So I found that to be interesting.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting. I mean, Heidi is like, I guess the cast members that are most likely to be in a sketch with Heidi are Mikey, Chloe Fineman, Punky Johnson, Molly Carney, Longfellow, Ego, Sarah, and Bowen. So like she's just really all over the place in terms of I guess, and JJ I missed too. So like, and Punky, yeah, she's really all over the place here. It's incredible. And then, are there any surprises here? I think one of the big surprises for me and most likely to be in a sketch with is Devin. Devin is in more sketches with JAJ than anybody else on the cast. Like that to me, I would never have thought.
I guess to me, that's not so surprising because of just stuff outside of SNL. Like the fact that it seems like, I know that Devin and JJ and Dismukes are all going on tour together this summer. Like,
Right.
I think Dismukes talked about in your guys' interview how, like, they're all kind of collaborating together more. So, just from that aspect, it wasn't so surprising to me. It was almost more surprising. And again, it feels like recency bias for, Dismukes, that his wasn't JJ for me, that it's Mikey, but obviously Mikey is, such a, again, like another person that is just an anchor of the show right now. So that also tracks.
Yeah, that is for sure. I think, really what this shows you beyond the fact that Mikey and Heidi are clearly still, sketch padding with their numbers is that they are really spreading the wealth as far as, them being in sketches with lots of different cast members and working with many different people. I think it's always interesting, on a smaller cast to compare how that would look versus a larger cast. I think when you go back to casts of like 7 to 10 people, the pairings are probably more glaring to take a look at and be like, okay, well, this person clearly, will be in a sketch. Like Belushi will clearly be in something with Aykroyd more than anything else. So, or that type of
thing.
Thing.
Another thing that I'm just noticing now that I find it fascinating is that I think on the show, there's been so much talk throughout the season that like the top 3 in the power rankings, which I guess we'll see shortly, have been, correct me if I'm wrong, Heidi, Mikey, and Bowen have been pretty much the top 3 all season.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So it's surprising to me that you don't see Bowen's name, on this list at all, as far as like most likely to be in a sketch with. And I wonder if that just says more so about how, the sketches we've been seeing from Bowen lately, like they're a Bowen sketch, and you don't necessarily always expect to see, oh, it's Bowen and so. I mean, to me, like, I think, Bowen and Ego certainly collaborate a lot. But other than that, it definitely, seems like, it's a Bowen sketch.
Yeah. So Bowen, most likely to be with Heidi. They've been in 33 sketches together this season. Then it's Bowen and Mikey. So again, Heidi, Mikey being in a lot of sketches with these cast members, 31. Who do you think Bowen is in the third most amount of sketches with this season? You have to guess.
I still want to stick with
Ego?
but maybe I'm wrong.
It's actually JJ. Bowen and JJ together, 27 sketches. Then with Chloe, 26 sketches. Then with Andrew, 25 sketches. And also Ego, 25 sketches. So basically like the 5th or 6th on the board, Bowen with Ego this season.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they're not getting as much. Either they're not doing as much together, or they're not getting as much on the show together as you may have expected a couple years ago. I remember us talking about the potential of having Ego and Bowen as update anchors together, and their chemistry that you saw on, especially at the Good Night. So clearly, there's not as much collaboration going on there that's at least making it to the live show. Sammy, any other cast members on this list that you want to dive into with regards to their, while I have all the data up of who they may be collaborating with versus not?
Yeah. I do want to look at this least likely to be in sketch with real quick. I mean, obviously, again, going back to Trost, obviously being shut out this week, it makes sense if you're a featured player who's new to the show, who comes into the show, by herself without any other cast members, that your name's going to be on here, a couple times. So to me, not surprising, but I think, worth noting. I know that when we had Bobby on the show, he talked about how it was hard for him, like kind of coming into the cast alone. So, it's certainly something that, it isn't so surprising, but I'm hoping in these last 2 episodes that we get to see, a little bit more from Trost.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So
Yeah.
Trost most likely to be in a sketch with Chloe Fineman. What do you think about that? Because I'll tell you, her next most likely cast member to be in a sketch with was Heidi, and then her next most likely to be in a sketch with after that was Punky. So she's collaborating more with the women of the cast. Do you think that maybe, some of the men of the cast should be collaborating with her, or I'll rephrase it. Should she be collaborating with more of the men of the cast to sort of diversify her sketch portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, I guess why not? I mean, it would be what's interesting about that point is that I feel like we put so much emphasis on, the fact that, she had this connection with Please Don't Destroy, before coming into the season. And, I would have to go back and look at like actual, the writing credits of certain live sketches and stuff like that. But I don't know if that is necessarily, if you zoom out on the season, if we've really seen that. And has she been in any of the PDD sketches that you can recall this season?
She's definitely, like, PDD has definitely written her sketches, but I don't know
Uh-huh.
that she's been in. I mean, we'll take a look right now.
Any of the shorts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember her being in any of them right now that I'm taking a look
Yeah.
at. So going back to all the way at the beginning of the season, no, I don't. She has not been in any of them.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I mean, I would love to see her collaborate with a lot of the, male cast. I think her and Dismukes, I think there's something there for sure. Like they both have a, more odd sense of humor. So seeing them as a pair, I think would be really interesting.
They've been in 19 sketches together. So, that is about halfway down the board for Chloe Trost as far as her collaborations on the show. But really just not, I guess it takes time to develop chemistry with some of these people, whereas Heidi, Mikey have clearly been, clearly have developed chemistry with more cast members. But I think maybe, through this conversation, I do think that Bowen and his lack of appearances on these charts show what you were saying, that maybe he is a less of a collaborator than Mikey and Heidi are based on this type of raw data. And that may be my one biggest takeaway from what we learned here tonight. All right, so let's get into the power rankings of the week. I thought that would be an interesting exercise as a palate cleanser before we get into the power rankings through 18
My
episodes.
palate
So
is cleansed.
yeah, exactly. So I'm excited to talk about these power rankings. So these are Mike's power rankings, where he takes a lot of different data, including appearances, where he looks at every single sketch. He rates them A, B, C, or D based on all the rules in the sketch. So if you are anchoring a sketch, like you're a Keenan and you're driving that sketch, you get an A roll, and then he'll rate everybody B, C, or D. And he attributes power rankings to each cast member from the episode. We'll take the average overall. There's some other factors in there, including who says Raleigh from New York, what time in the episode you appear. Is it before Weekend Update or after Weekend Update, that type of thing. And it all comes together in one giant number that we look at every single week, average out, and talk about who is dominating the season. So Mike puts together this huge chart here that you need glasses to take a look at. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more so we could talk through the numbers on the chart here. So let's talk through the power rankings through 18 episodes here. Number one, across the board, still dominating the power rankings from this season, the aforementioned Heidi Gardner at 90.7. Right under her, less than a point behind Heidi, is Mikey Day at 89.9. 2 points down is Bowen Yang at 87.9. Colin Jost at number 4, 80.3. He had a very big week. Looks like his best week in a while, within 111 from this week. Kenan Thompson also had his best week in a long time. 121 he put up in the power rankings. So he is in 5th place, 78.9. Ego at 6th with 72.2, right ahead of JJ at 71.6. Chloe Fineman is at 66.5. Dismukes at 61.9. Sarah Sherman and Marcelo Hernandez in a literal tie at 60.6.
Wow.
I assume that Sarah is ahead of Marcelo because of decimal points there. But Marcelo did have a better week this week on the rankings at an 89.2, and Sarah put up a 44.6. Which is interesting, right? Because she had a very dominant role, yet it was only the only role she was in all night. Michael
Right.
Che is in 12th place at 56.3. Then we start getting into the Reds over there with Devin Walker at 43.3, even though he had a 61.2, so above average week for Devin. Michael Longfellow, 35.4. Punky, 33.5. Trost, 32.3. Even though she was shut out, she's still ahead of Molly Carney at 23.5. So, Sammy, what do you think about the power rankings this week?
Well, something that I noticed looking at this, I mean, obviously, let's start at the top. I really feel like, especially after doing that exercise on the, who are you most likely to be in a sketch with this season, I think if we're trying to predict who's going to be number one, I think Heidi Gardner is pretty safely. I know it's, she's, less than a point away from Mikey Day, but I just have a feeling that she's going to continue this momentum going into the end of the season and stay on top. It will be interesting to see, obviously with Maya coming in next week, will we, and with it being a Mother's Day episode, will we be seeing cameos from maybe other former female cast members that can be a trend that could potentially have an impact on her screen time next week? But I really do feel like she is gonna end up on top.
Yeah, so it would be the first ever season, obviously, for Heidi to win the power rankings. It would also be the first season right now she's trending towards leading the cast in sketch appearances. So that would be like, sort of like her first championship in, like you put this in sports terms. And I think that Heidi's having a very impressive season. I am surprised that she's so close to Mikey and to Bowen here. I know that they're both, like we're sort of looking at like the three pillars of the show in some way, but I would have to put my backing behind Heidi there. Do you think that Mikey or Bowen have a chance to top her? Only 2 episodes left.
I mean, with the numbers being so close, certainly there's a chance. And I really do feel like the Maya episode, like I said, like there could be, some impact. Honestly, I think, Bowen probably could see himself benefiting the most from that episode just because, they were in that ABBA sketch, a couple uh episodes ago in the Kate McKinnon episode. Like I feel Maya and Bowen, having, a lot of appearances together next week. So maybe that boosts him up. But yeah, I still feel like Heidi's got this.
I think it's a 3-horse race. Like I think there's no chance, based on what I'm seeing here, that unless Keenan like collaborates with Maya like crazy, it would have to be like a very like vintage Keenan performance, even better than what he just had for Keenan to have a shot. I think Colin Jost, putting up 111 this last week and 9 minutes of screen time, I just don't think like he has the juice to catch either one of the top 3. So there's just too big of a gap. I don't know. I can't see Keenan making up 12 points either. I just think it's a 3-horse race between Bowen, Mikey, and Heidi. Eric in the chat points out that Andrew, Sarah, and Marcelo are both really close as well. So who do you think ends up on top there between those 3?
That one I feel a lot more like it's a real toss up for me. Um, yeah, that one this one I honestly have no idea about. I mean, if you're looking at actually the trend of recent episodes, I mean, obviously Marcelo had a better episode than his last 2. I mean, they're all everything's so neck and neck. I don't know. I mean, I think I think Dismukes. I mean, he's just had such a good season. And I mean, like that sketch he did with Jay at the closing out the show this week. Like, I don't know. I would like to see him on top, but yeah, for me, this one's honestly too close to call.
I think Sarah's the one that I don't think has the chance to top these 3. I just haven't seen her dominate an episode like Brolin over the last 6 episodes seems to be like her best episode in these power rankings. And that's a really good episode for her, 114 when her average is 60. But, you know, I just don't think the show feels like Sarah is anything more than a Will Forte. And I mean that in like the biggest compliment whatsoever, which is just like she's going to do her thing and they're going to find a spot for her in the show, but it's not necessarily going to be every episode. So, for me, I can't see it. Whereas I think Andrew is being integrated into the fabric of the show a lot more. And Marcelo, like, clearly is like the horse that they are putting all of their money into right now to be the future star of the show. Like, Marcelo has a very legitimate shot, maybe not next year, but like season 51, he could be at the top of the power rankings.
Yeah, and if we're just talking again about like choices, overanalyzing choices the show makes, I did find it interesting that during the Q&A monologue during this episode, who are the 3 cast members we see, asking questions? It's Heidi, Bowen, and Dismukes. So clearly, I think recently they've been trying to integrate him more. So I think, I kind of agree with you on your assessment of Sarah as well. So I guess
Did
we'll
you
see
hear
what
though
happens.
that was the Andrew role was a Longfellow role in dress, and they
I
switched it to
did
Andrew?
I did see that on Twitter. Do you don't have any insight on why they did that? Is there anything like that, or?
My honest guess is that Andrew's sketches got cut and they felt like they wanted to prioritize putting Andrew in the show.
Right.
That's me being generous to Andrew and unfortunately not so generous to Longfellow. But I can't think of it more than that because in dress, it's not like the cold open was different in dress. So in dress rehearsal, they clearly had Longfellow anchoring the cold open and then coming back and asking a question in dress.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's like, look, I'm always rooting for Michael Longfellow. So for me, I don't want to see his roles being expensed for anybody. Then again, I also want Andrew to be in the show. So it's a tough call there when they're both really good. I sort of wish that we could have seen Longfellow in the role of asking questions to a host because for me, I know a lot of people compare him to like Kevin Nealon a little bit. Like I definitely see like I think he's somewhere of a cross between Nealon and Norm. And I know Norm was always like everybody's favorite when he would ask a question to a host. So I was just like, I would have liked to see that like really, really dry version of what it's like to have Michael Longfellow ask a question to a host on stage.
Yeah, no, that would have been really interesting to see. Looking at someone else on this list, Ego is it's a little disappointing to see. Well, not a little disappointing. It's disappointing to see that since Brolin's episode, she hasn't really had like an amazing episode. Yeah, and I wonder why that is. I mean, I can definitely see her and Maya collaborating a lot next week. So hopefully she has a really good episode. But she's definitely in these last couple episodes not had a ton to do, honestly.
Yeah, I think what she's done, first of all, I do love Ego, and I think she always brings it on the show. I think she's clearly cemented herself as like she's never going to drive the show. It's just not going to be like we're never going to walk away from Saturday Night Live feeling like we're watching the Ego Wodem show. But will she have some good nights? 3 or 4 times a season? Yeah, like she'll have some nights where we walk away being like, "Oh, Ego was really strong tonight." Then she'll disappear for a few episodes. I don't know why. I do think she absolutely belongs in the same category as Heidi, Mikey, and Bowen. Like it should be a 4-horse race, but for whatever reason, it's not. And I don't know if whatever it is, it could be either there's just not they're not writing for her, or there's just something in the process from sketch pitch to live on air that isn't always clicking for her week after week. It's unfortunate a little bit.
Yeah. And, obviously we're looking towards the end of the season here, and I'm looking at the bottom of this list. I mean, I still feel like I'm of the mindset that the cast is going to be intact for SNL 50, but I'm curious if your thoughts have changed at all on that, or if you think we're kind of going to bring this group along for next season.
I think that all 17 of these players by choice will be around next year. The only chance that they're not is that production and Lorne really just feel like a couple of them are not cutting it, and they want to put together the best. They know that they're going to get. I think SNL, between social media viewership, YouTube numbers, Peacock after the fact, and live on air, is going to get 5 times the viewership total that they will on an average season next year. So with that amount of eyeballs and those amount of like watches that they're going to have next year at some point, I have to wonder if they're thinking about like putting their best people on the field at that, like regardless of who you are, your relationship to them. So does that mean that they cut a couple people, unfortunately, between now and this special anniversary season? It is a possibility. But it would, if they do that, Sammy, we're going to be having a couple of huge what ifs where it's like, well, what if they would have kept that person past 50 and then we could have actually seen them start to drive the show?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Remind me, going from 39 to 40 was 39 was when we had like that big influx of featured players, right? So yeah, I mean, I honestly never
They cut a bunch of them.
Yeah, I never really put that in perspective, the idea that maybe from, the show's point of view, yeah, SNL 40 was obviously such a huge moment that would be a reason behind that. Not so. I guess in my mind, it was always like, well, they cast a wide net, and Beck and Kyle were the ones that were able to make a mark, and they kind of moved on from everybody else. But I think when you put in perspective of like going from 39 to 40, I think that will be interesting to see if history repeats itself a little bit. Obviously, it's a little different of a situation with one new featured player versus 6, but very interesting.
Look, when you're living at home day to day, you're lying on the couch, like you don't need to like pick up your laundry or do the dishes or whatever. But when people are coming over to your house, you're like, oh, we got to clean, right? Like, and that's what's happening next year, right? Like people are coming into SNL's house. Like the doors are open. 50 years of moments and iconic memories are walking through the door. And people who haven't watched Saturday Night Live since 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, who just turned off the show because they, went through their high school experience or whatever, and their friends stopped watching it, are going to be like, oh, wow, like SNL's turning 50. Like, I have to check out what they're going to do. Like, is there anything going to be fun happening on Saturday for SNL to party and, celebrate the 50th? And I just think like that is the equivalent of like inviting friends over and you're like, my house needs to be spotless.
That's such a, you got a way of words, John. You should host a podcast or something. That's a great analogy.
Thanks, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, Sammy, anything else on this list that you want to talk about? Any of the cast members?
I honestly, I think we about covered it, unless there's anything I'm missing.
No, I think I'm good on my end. I think for Maya coming in this week, again, I'm very curious. Is this going to be an alumni episode? Kristen, obviously, when she was there, we had a lot of people coming in to help with that one, but it still felt like Saturday Night Live. Like it really felt like they involved some good people there. So, will we get an Amy Poehler? Like, could we get a Bronx Beat this weekend? And then Amy has a really good week. Could there be some other people that are friends of Maya's to come in for Mother's Day? Like, I do wonder what the show will look like here. If this is going to be more of your like Christmas finale premiere type feel, where it feels like a special week of Saturday Night Live, and then the finale feels more like the button on season 49 with Jake Gyllenhaal, or is this just your generic season 49 episode and Maya also happens to be a part of this crew?
My biggest question is, do you think we'll see Maya as Kamala? Because haven't we already had somebody else in the cast play her? Punky, yeah. So I mean, obviously, the show's done that in the past. You have somebody, do an impression, and then people come back and they do it again. But it felt like they, there were opportunities in the past couple of years to have her do it just for a cameo or whatever, and they haven't really done it.
Yeah, I think they shied away from it once they realized like that people were very tired of the cameos for people playing, in the, as a part of the world of the president. I always felt personally, like when we first started podcasting a few years ago, I always had the take that my problem with the stunt casting they were doing was not when former cast members were playing members of, the administration or candidates to be president. It was like the De Niro's and, that type of stuff that I felt like didn't really click. But when you had Maya Rudolph playing Kamala or Rachel Dratch doing something, like that was never a problem for me. So, I know not a lot of people loved it, but I think back to when Maya hosted last time. And I think we had Maya doing Kamala and Marty playing her husband, the first gentleman or second gentleman. I didn't hate that as much. Like I thought we would end up seeing more of that pairing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think honestly, like I think they should do it. Like I think they should do it because we haven't really seen a real like obviously we haven't seen them with Mikey's Biden because we haven't seen them so much, but we just haven't seen that dynamic in a couple years now. So I think, especially with it being an election year, the show should do it, or at least bring someone in to do it on the cast. Otherwise, I think they should really build up that supporting cast of political figures as we kind of go into the fall.
Well, let's look at it from the other side of the coin. Have they done enough in season 49 with Mikey Day as Biden that we have a good understanding of his characterization of Biden going into this election in the fall? I don't think so. Do you?
I think we were getting somewhere with it, and then the show just kind of just hasn't had, it has kind of like abandoned that thread a little bit, which is nice in some ways because I feel like we've gotten a little bit more variety in cold opens, not being just ripped from the headlines, Biden or Trump talking at the camera as much in the last couple of weeks. But I definitely don't have necessarily a sense of the character, but at the same time, we didn't meet Baldwin's Trump until fall of 2016, which again,
that's true.
At the time, loved, really liked that was happening, and then they beat into the ground. So we'll see if we see more of that before the season's over.
It just felt like between season 48 and 49, there was a clear decision to let's take the Biden impression away from JJ and give it to Mikey. And then we're going to find the right time at the beginning of the season, and it ends up being in the Nate Bargatze episode, to give the Biden impression a chance through Mikey to establish itself with the audience. That was the Christopher Walken cameo appearance. And I actually think like that was the best Mikey as Biden we got this season. And then we got it in bits and pieces. Like we had that Panda press conference. We got it like a little bit. We got it. FaceTime. That was kind of funny.
Sneakers.
We also exactly. It was a little bit in the State of the Union, obviously, where we had him before we got Scarlett Johansson. So I felt like they've just been like doing baby steps, and really the most established was all the way back in October. And I think you have to do one more Biden Mikey sketch to just like, because not everybody's like us. Not everybody's going to remember all these moments, to really just like bang it in the heads of the casuals. Okay, this is who's playing Biden on Saturday Night Live. This is their shtick. Just so you know what it is going into the fall, and that everybody's excited as much as they can be to see JJ and Mikey go at it in the fall. So,
or playing, I don't know if devil's advocate is the right phrase, but what if they've been taking their foot off the gas a little bit because maybe they're not sure if they want Mikey to be Biden in the fall. Maybe they're intentionally.
I'm sure.
You're sure? I want to see it.
I would be stunned.
I like it enough to where I want the show to stick with it and build the character, but it is definitely interesting that we've been seeing it. We saw it a lot more in the fall than we're seeing it now, and we're getting, closer and closer to the election. So maybe, there's so many ways to look at it. Maybe because we're going to get so much in the fall, You know, they're letting it breathe a little bit so people don't get sick of it because people complain that there's too many political cold opens. But at the same time, we're SNL fans and we overanalyze everything. So yeah, I mean, I think that will end up.
It's not a complaint though.
happening.
I don't think people are complaining. Like, okay, sorry. If people are
Yeah.
complaining there's too many political cold opens, you're watching the wrong show. If people are complaining the things that they're doing with the political cold opens,
That's more so what I meant. And so, you know, I think they definitely, you know, can create this Biden character and put him in situations that aren't just, you know, like the walk-in sketch. I really enjoyed that, not just because of the cameo. Like I really, you know, when I look back at cold opens from the season, like that'll definitely be one that, you know, I can still, the fact that I can still remember it, like even, you know, obviously the walk-in moment was huge, but you know, the fact that I can still remember it, you know, that's the kind of stuff I want to see more of.
Totally agree. Gelp in the chat was asking if Dismukes played Biden during Dress at one point this year. That absolutely did happen. That was not a fever dream. At some point, Dismukes played Biden. I don't know what the reason was for that exactly, or why they tried to mess around. But again, not, you know, besides, you know, Papyrus 2, Dress isn't canon. So we can't, you know, they can't, we've gotta let go of those memories a little bit, even though that did happen and almost made the show. Yeah, so I'd be very curious to see if this does come back at some point. But clearly, with Maya in the building, there's an opportunity to do something this week. So I'm very excited. Any other Maya sketches or Maya moments you'd want to see this weekend?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Off the top of my head, I mean,
I said Bronx Beat. I would love that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the answer. I mean, I really do always love Maya doing some sort of impression on Update, and I feel like she is, you know, the type of host, you know, especially being a former cast member, where you know we maybe see them in more elements of the show. You can see them in the cold open, you can see them on Update. So, seeing her interact with Jost or Che, I don't know if we've ever really seen that, so that would be something new. At least maybe I'm not remembering, but I don't know if she's ever been playing a character on the desk with them. So that would be something I'd like to see.
Okay, here, going back on my notes now, we have her playing Dilma Rousseff. Do you know who that is?
No. Is that a real person or a character?
I swear on my life. Dilma Rousseff was commenting on the impeachment. Who is Dilma Rousseff? Oh, the former president of Brazil in season 41, episode 16.
Was she?
Oh, so sorry. This is the Fred Armisen episode where he goes. It's season 41, episode 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So it's been
one, I think.
Been a while. Yeah.
No, no Whitney Houston in this era. No. Trying to think of her other ones that she's done. I guess, could she do Beyonce? I guess it's a little bit like there's like her album came out a couple months ago, but I don't really know what it could be, but it will be interesting. I would like to see it. Can't hurt. Yeah.
Well, we see Martin Short appear. Obviously, he was just there a couple weeks ago, but they obviously have a relationship. That's especially if she's playing Kamala again. Bring back
I'm always game. Marty always makes stuff. So that I look forward to it. Well, Sammy, this was a blast getting to talk some numbers with you. Mike, absolutely. I hope we did be proud going through all the analytics of the
Fat Daddy.
Yeah, Fat Daddy raising that baby. So hopefully Mike will be back with us next week. We will see how the baby raising is going, if he's able to step away for an hour or so to do the numbers next week. If not, I will be there to carry the show through, and we'll definitely get to hear from him at some point as we round out the rest of the season. Of course, we will be back for the Hot Take Show right after the Maya Rudolph episode. That will be so much fun to go through everything and talk through what we saw that night, the penultimate Hot Take Show of the season. And we got a roundtable on Monday, By the Numbers next Wednesday. We also have our exclusive SNL sketch breakdown just for the patrons. I recorded that with Bill Kenny just before this show. So that one will be out tomorrow for all the patrons. We're going to be talking a little bit more about the OBGYN sketch and break down everything that went into that one. So that was fun to talk talk through with Bill Kenny. Of course, really appreciate everybody's support for this and all the podcasts we're doing. Sammy, anything you would like to say to the listeners?
Well, John, thanks for having me. Mike's got big shoes to fill, and so happy to help you carry the weight in this episode. You guys can find me at that Sammy Kay on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. As always, check out the library of superfan takeover content that we have here on the Saturday Night Network. I'm sure we'll be doing some drafts this summer, which I'm very excited about. And then, honestly, I'm plugging John Mulaney's new show, Everybody's in LA. It is like, I don't know.
Is it a talk show? Like, what's the deal? Is it like a late night television show?
It's literally like, yeah, it's him hosting a late night television show. And Richard Kind is his sidekick and announcer. And it's just like an alternate universe where, we're only getting this for 6 nights, but it's like an alternate universe where, what if he was the host of like the Tonight Show and we got that every night? And that's something I've always wanted. And the fact that I'm getting like a slip, like a tiny morsel of that, as a big fan of his, has been very enjoyable. So I'll be watching that here in 50 minutes. And I'm not getting paid by Netflix to plug this, but definitely, give it a watch and hit me up with your thoughts, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely will be checking that out. So that'll be fun. I've been meaning to check out the roast of Tom Brady. So there's so much going on in the world right now. Really just need to find the time through all this SNL stuff to catch up on it all. But if you want to give us a follow here on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok at the SNL Network to see everything we're going to be posting about Maya starting tomorrow. You can subscribe to the podcast also on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please leave your comments. Seriously, love reading all of them every single time. I get a comment. I get so excited just to see what people are saying about the shows and getting to talk to some of you about the week of SNL. 2 more weeks of SNL coverage for the season. Let's make it an absolute blast. I hope everybody gets involved and talks in the chat and stuff like that, because this is the time, right? It's a great time to be a fan of Saturday Night Live, and it's a great time to talk to all of you about our thoughts as the season wraps up and really close the book and talk about everything this season was. So you can also find Mike Murray at SNL Mike Murray to see all the graphs and stuff and numbers that he's going to be posting. I'm sure he's going to be posting, his wife's screen time, how much, screen time she was doing throughout the birth process. So make sure to check that out. And I really want to thank our presenting partner for this show, latenighter.com, such a wonderful partner of ours, to go check out everything that they are doing on their website. All right. On behalf of everybody live in the chat with us on this Wednesday night, Sammy Kay and myself, Jon Schneider from the SNN, we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.